Okay, good evening, everybody. If you can take your seats, we're going to get started. Okay, good evening and welcome to our very first Building Our Future Together community engagement session. It's great to see so many of you here tonight, especially as we work our way through this pandemic. My name is Kelly Blakely, and I am one of our 3 community co-chairs here for this program. At this point, I would like to acknowledge any dignitaries, as well as school board members, and any other holding positions of the community leadership. So, let's talk about why we're here tonight. Since 2017, community members just like us have worked with district leadership and architects to develop a comprehensive educational facility master plan for our school. Now, they need more than ever to help determine the best way to implement the plan. Building Our Future Together, or BOFT, is a process designed for stakeholders like us to collaborate with the district on this important facility plan. I want to emphasize that this is a program that is community-centered. As you will see, the Building Our Future Together team is made up of community members, so it can lay out the foundation for a truly collaborative conversation between our community members and our school district. The feedback gathered at the BOFT sessions will be used to implement the Educational Facility Master Plan, focused on creating effective learning environments for the students of BPS 101 for many years to come. We would like to thank the district for its efforts in helping us implement the program and for sharing your time with us tonight. We believe this conversation will make a lasting difference for our schools, our children, and our community. The Building Our Future Together program is led by a group of community members, along with Brian Schwab and Ginny Gaspar and I. We are serving as the community co-chairs for this program. So in December, our facility team began putting together the Building Our Future Together program. Our team consists of 20 people, 20 community members, current and past parents, and district representatives. At this time, I would like to ask the facilitating team members to stand and be recognized, please, wherever you are. There you are. While this team is responsible for putting the program together, it is important to note that feedback about the facility plan from community engagement sessions, just like this one, is crucial for the decision-making process. Now I would like to introduce Brian to share more information about our community engagement program.
Thank you, Kelly. So what I want to talk a little bit about is just the program overall and what we're looking to do through these engagement sessions with you. First, the big thing is we want to hear as much as possible from all of you, future parents, past parents, everyone who has children in the school or not. To accomplish this, our goal is to bring and have these community sessions, 4 of them, along with a couple open houses that we'll continue to do over the next couple months. During this time, we're going to have some small group work that you guys will be doing tonight, and we'll continue to do that in all of these sessions. And then we want to get the feedback from all of you during that time. We know there's a lot of information to cover and learn about in the schools, and current conditions, the facilities, and all of the things that we're going to be going through. And at each session, we'll learn more about the details of these particular topics related to the future of the facilities, implementations, and what we want to accomplish. These topics will serve as the building blocks of information as we work towards developing recommendations on how we best plan reality here in Batavia. Tonight, we will be hearing an overview of the current facilities, recent planning efforts, and what is possible for the future. After the informational presentation, we will get to work to hear what you think about the information learned tonight and learn more about these sessions. You can take a look at the small group activity stuff that you have in the packets tonight, and we'll go through that information as we continue on. After our introductory session tonight, we will get to the details and the options for financing plans in our next session, which will be February 24th. The district's financial advisors will provide information about how the district is funded, our options for funding, facilities, updates, and improvements. The community, then on March 3rd, we will do a deep dive into the Educational Master Facilities Plan and provide feedback on the community's priorities about different aspects of that plan. On March 17th, we'll wrap up the first phase of the work with our recommendations on the community priorities for the implementing the plan. In April, we will go into the open houses for the community. These open houses are an opportunity for even more residents to get involved in the Building of the Future Together process by learning about the facility plan, our community engagement program before providing feedback on our recommendations for the implementation. Once we've heard from as many people as possible, we will finalize our recommendations for implementing the plan on May 24th. These recommendations will be critically important as the district moves forward with implementing the facility master plan. Each session will follow a typical agenda as shown here. As mentioned, we'll start with an information fact-filled presentation, then we'll work together to discuss the topic and provide your thoughts and feedback during a small group work time. We know your time is very valuable, so we want to keep it concise, and moving along within 2 hours is the goal of what we want to accomplish. We know there's going to be a lot of information to consider, and we're going to document everything. Following each session, we'll document the work of each small group and create a summary of all these responses for you. All materials will be posted on the website. Presentations and work group responses will be available through the session. We'll also produce an executive summary with consensus points from the small group work, which will be building blocks for our final recommendations. Now I would like to turn it over to Jenny to tell us a few more details.
Thanks, Brian. You might be wondering, what if I have a question tonight? Well, the district and the experts here tonight have a lot of information to share with us, and so our agenda is very tight. With that in mind, it's important that the presenter is able to complete the entire presentation, so we ask that you hold all questions during the presentation. This will ensure that we have plenty of time to work. If you do have a question, there are a few ways to have your question addressed. During the work session, the presenters and facilitating team members will visit the tables to answer any questions you have. Also, there are I have a question forms on each table. If you have a question or comment and we are not able to respond during the small group time, please fill out a form and turn it in to us at the end of the session. You're also welcome to call or send us an email at a later time. We'd also like to invite you to stay up to date with the latest Building Our Future Together information. As we said, all of tonight's information will be posted on the district website, but please also consider following us on our social media platforms as well. One last thing, please be sure everyone at the table signed in. This is our way of making sure we can follow up with you and keep you informed about the program. We'll pick up these sheets during the small group time later in the session. And of course, feel free to grab some refreshments. There's water and cookies at the table in the back, and use the washroom if necessary, right by the doors out to the foyer. It's time to get started on the real reason that we're all here tonight, to learn how we can all help to build the future of our school district. Tonight we have 3 district leaders and an architect from DLR Group who facilitated the development of the Educational Facilities Master Plan to provide us with firsthand insights on our facilities. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lisa Hitchens, Superintendent, to start the presentation tonight.
I know the real reason you're here. You think you're going to get an inside scoop about whether we're canceling school tomorrow, but you're not. But thank you so much for coming out tonight, especially given the weather conditions, and we really appreciate it. Batavia has a long history of working with our community. Our community is very involved in our schools, And the district has never forgotten that the schools belong to the community. Our schools need to reflect the value that our community places on the future. So schools are meant to be a reflection of the community, which means that there's no one-size-fits-all facilities plan, and that's why you're here, because you can make a difference in that plan. Just as the community has evolved, the schools need to evolve as well, and you can help us with that. When our district has made improvements to our facilities or built new facilities in the past, we've used a master planning process, and the district's last master plan ended in 2012. So this past decade has been the longest time span since 1955 that we haven't done major construction or major renovations. And school has changed a lot since then, even in these past 10 years, and we have an opportunity to update and to improve our facilities to meet these changes. So we have designed these community engagement sessions so that we can put the finishing touches on a master plan that you heard that we've already been working on. We've been working on it for several years. And we need to have some quality discussions with you so that we can put the fine-tuning on that plan. And we have some speakers here tonight that are going to give you some context for our discussions for this evening. So first, I would like to introduce Dr. Brad Newkirk. He is the district's Chief Innovation Officer, Chief Academic Officer, and Innovation. I just made up a title. Chief Academic Officer, and he's going to talk to you about how education is evolving.
Thank you. School has changed. In the past, school was largely based on one teacher dispensing knowledge to many students. Today, when I walk in our schools, I don't really see students in rows at desks listening to their teacher. Instead, what I see are students working, doing research in small groups, meeting in those groups with their teacher or a specialist, using adaptive technology based on their disability to communicate with their peers, and I see students collaborating together to solve problems. And they're doing this work on the floors, they're doing this work in the halls, they're gathering in odd spaces to make this learning happen. Teachers and students make do with what they have, whether it's repurposing their classroom furniture, shopping at garage sales, making barriers within their classrooms to make it more usable, piling boxes in classrooms, on counters for storage. They're making learning work for our students today. But with facilities that match our teaching and learning, we could do much more, and we want to. Our real focus should be on making the school experience more authentic, more hands-on, more collaborative, more connected to the world that our students will enter after leaving Batavia Public Schools. Another thing that you'll see in our schools are students who a generation ago may have been placed in specialized schools away from our community. Batavia Schools has worked hard to bring back our students. While their needs may be different, they belong in our schools with their peers. To give them the best chance at learning, students need spaces that match their needs, whether it's the need to have greater access to our playgrounds, to have spaces to teach life skills, whether it's cooking a meal for their family or making their bed. We need those spaces, or to have space to receive physical or occupational therapy. We need to embrace all of our community's children, and we need to have spaces that meet their unique learning needs. School has definitely changed, and we need spaces that match today's students. I'm going to turn it over to Tony Inglesi, our Chief Financial Officer, for a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Brad. The challenges that we face can be categorized into two types: functional and operational. Functional in terms of how well our facilities support learning and educational programs, and operational in terms of the logistics of the way students and teachers and families use those spaces apart from academics, how we maintain them and how we improve them over time. From a functional aspect, learning modalities are evolving. So what traditionally was primarily direct instruction is turning into collaboration, hands-on learning, physical practice, research and inquiry, and focused study. The specialized programs in particular, by way of example, special education and early learning, they require specially designed spaces to meet their needs that include accessibility for wheelchairs, special restrooms at close proximity to where they learn, and in particular for young children, 3 to 5-year-olds that we offer services for, they need special spaces just to get into the school so that they're not caught in traffic getting in the building. From an operational standpoint, the way we use spaces, the way we maintain them, and the improvement of those spaces has changed over time. The way that we maintain boilers and the way that we maintain chillers, which used to be more of a reactive approach, we're trying to move to more proactive so that we can anticipate the ends of life cycles of those particular things. And also with regard to logistics, transportation, separating buses from cars and pedestrians are also challenges, and the vast majority of our school spaces aren't even sprinklered in terms of fire safety because they're that old. Also, too, security has changed in terms of perimeter and perimeter control and making sure that when visitors come to the school, they come through the front office. The vast majority of our schools were not designed that way when they were built years ago. My favorite example to illustrate all of these challenges is H.C. Storm School. H.C. Storm School was built in 1978, and it's a cute school in a very nice neighborhood, and it has curb appeal. You drive by the school and you think it's quaint, and it is. But things have changed there in terms of how we use that space since it was built in 1978, and that school hasn't changed much since 1978. Car and bus and pedestrian traffic all intersect in one spot. If you live in that neighborhood or if you're a parent who picks up their child, it's chaos. And that's true at almost every school in this school district, but it's especially true here. Our neighbors are very patient with us, as are the Batavia Police Department. The parking lots are inadequate, forcing many parents when they visit the school to park in the street. And certainly, too, when they enter the building, the first thing that they walk through in the main door is the multi-purpose area, which you see up to the top. And so they don't come directly into the office. Also, too, at H.C. Storm School, the windows and doors are original. They have reached the end of their useful life, as is the roof. It's over 40 years old, and although we maintain it regularly and repair it and patch it, there's not much more that we can do to that roof before we have to replace it, and that alone is $2 million at least. It also was constructed with metal walls in the interior of the building, and they were intended to be movable so that we could reconfigure the school as our needs evolved over time. But of course, those walls haven't moved an inch since they were installed in 1978, and they hang from the ceiling on hooks, and so they kind of sway a little bit. And so now with modern fire code, that we have to put closers on the doors so that they automatically shut and they can contain a fire, the doors bind because the walls move with the doors, and the doors don't lock very well. They also have inadequate electricity. We've maxed out the electricity in this school. We can't install a single additional circuit because it's maxed out. And we can't put any more electricity in those metal walls. And so it doesn't really lend itself well to the equipment or the technology that we use in that particular school. So if we were thinking about spaces and how they support learning, it would probably be imprudent for us to simply replace those walls, which needs to be done, and put the walls exactly in place where they exist now, because how we use space has changed. We want more collaborative spaces to support those hands-on learning activities. Functionally, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve student learning, and operationally, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve safety and how we use that space, in particular just car traffic going in and out of the building. All of these issues can be solved, every single one of them, but each requires significant planning and funding, and not in the drips and drabs that we're able to accommodate now. So stories like this, however, abound in the district. This is just the story of H.C. Storm School. We have 6 elementary schools in Batavia, a large middle school, and a large high school in which we sit. And we need a comprehensive plan to think about all of the things that we need district-wide and see how they fit together, because there are many interdependencies. In Storm's example, we could install a secure vestibule on the front of the school. That's easy enough. But if we don't think about it in terms of how we address parking in that particular school and the additional parking space that we need, we might put a vestibule on the front of the school and put a parking lot in the back, and that's not going to exactly meet our needs. We can replace windows and doors, but if we're going to put additions on that school or move things around, we don't want to throw good money after bad. We need to have a plan thought out in terms of the order and sequence of how these things fit together. In particular, if we just go and replace the roof, that's all well and good. That's $2 million. But if we come back and change the building envelope and how things are configured, well, we're wasting money. So in the meantime, we know that how we teach and learn has changed, and we're working on a plan accordingly to how we use space and how to see how all these things fit together. We're talking about new standards for safety and security, and it's not that that school is unsafe. It's just not ideal. And because it's not ideal, we work constantly to overcome the limitations of that space to make sure that it remains safe for students. And 2, accessibility standards and expectations for all students have changed. And we can make adaptations, and our teachers do every single day. They make these adaptations. But they shouldn't continue indefinitely. We need to have a plan. So our stakeholder teams have studied these issues together, and they've developed this master plan. And we believe we've come up with a way that optimizes making our facilities fit student learning and also factoring in the long-term operational costs and fitting all these things together so that we're not throwing good money after bad. We can get past the legacy of what our schools are, and so too while honoring the legacy for whom our schools are named after, so that we can preserve the legacy of H.C. Storm, but also adhere to the legacy of this school district in being as innovative as it possibly can be. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Lisa Hitchens.
I'll be brief because I want to introduce our architects. Like Tony said, we need a plan, and we have been working on it for many, many years. Several years, the board has made that a priority, and we have gotten input from community, parents, students, and staff. And your job is to help us to fine-tune that plan. So to continue the conversation, I wanted to introduce architect and BPS 101 parent, Carrie Van Sant. She's going to give you a little bit of information about the planning process so far, as well as a look into what it could be.
Just here. Thank you, Lisa. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces in the audience. Again, I'm Carrie Van Sant. I'm an architect and project manager with DLR Group. Also with us tonight is Dennis Bain. He's a client leader with our group. We're K-12 leaders in our Chicago office. Just a real quick note, DLR Group has been a top firm running globally in K-12 education design. We have architects, engineers, planners, interior designers, and we have our own researchers on staff. Former educators that have joined our research group. So when we approach a project, we do it meaningfully, we do it with all of our respective professionals, and work to solutions that are unique to the districts we worked with. A touch on the master planning process. So Lisa mentioned I'll go through the process. Traditionally, master plans have always been looking at the physical structure of buildings. What's broken, what needs to be fixed, how do we get in front of it, how do we make a proactive plan so that we're not putting Band-Aids on things. While we looked at the physical nature of all of the buildings in the district, DLR Group also takes it a step further. We look at the educational readiness and its ability to support teaching and learning today, but also thinking ahead. These buildings are supposed to last well into the future, right? And right now, as it's been highlighted, there are some challenges and room for great opportunity within the district. Ultimately, we know our teachers do great things to adapt spaces, but a lot of times they're doing way more to adapt those spaces than they should or should need to. So the Educational Master Facility Plan, or EMFP process, was a multi-year process. So it started in 2019 when we came on board with the district. There's multiple phases that dove deep into understanding as much as we could about the district. It also we worked with stakeholder groups to understand the vision of what teaching and learning and what BPS 101 schools could be. We facilitated the process with a core team of individuals. We also met throughout that process with community members, business partners, students, parents. We tried to get as many voices as part of the process as possible. And we studied a number of things. So we studied the history of the facilities, how they're constructed, their condition, how the buildings are being used today, how teachers and staff want or need to be able to use the buildings into the future, and what's possible or what might need to change to be able to accommodate teaching and learning. How did we study this? So there's a number of different analyses up on the screen here. We took staff listening tours, so we took time to listen to what staff say they need or what could be improved to enhance teaching and learning and make it easier in the classroom. We shadowed students. We worked with teachers to understand the types of activities that they're doing, when they're doing them, and how long they're doing them in the classroom, and what types of spaces would support them best. We did visioning workshops with various stakeholder groups. We looked at the educational spatial adequacy of the building, so the ability to support the different types of learning activities that Tony mentioned, the different modalities. We looked at capacity and utilization. We reviewed a lot of existing data and reports, and we did surveys and then assessed the buildings and their physical condition. Our team took all of those factors, and I think it's important to note that we looked through our analyses in multiple lenses. If you only look at one lens, only look at the facility conditions, you don't get the big picture. You understand what's currently, ailing the building, what needs to be maintained, what's failing, what might need slight improvements. But without understanding the educational adequacy, how buildings need to flex and learn, how they need proper power and technology to support the activities that are happening in the classroom, how the buildings are using energy, what the indoor environmental quality is like, and how it's affecting the occupants. And we're talking about, are they comfortable? Are they comfortable enough that they're not worried about being comfortable so that they can learn or teach? The air quality, how comfortable the visual, the lighting, or even how complex a space might be, and the ability to hear in space, as well as whether there's adequate storage and ability to access spaces. So these are some common themes that we discovered at all buildings. They're broken down into a few different buckets here: safety and security, accessibility, whether it's impacted by being warm and dry within the facility, and functional needs. So high on the list, making sure that we are improving not only building safety and having proper wayfinding and signage to get people to where they need to be, but improving site access and safety. Also making our buildings accessible for all people, all students that have different abilities, so that they can access programs and spaces no matter their ability. Making sure that we have restrooms and improvements that are accessible as part of that process. The warm and dry are your nuts and bolts. A lot of that you may not see, right? So the HVAC, the heating, ventilating, air conditioning components, the stuff that's above the ceiling, behind the walls, that it needs to be updated and refreshed. It has life cycles and maintenance cycles and those are things people don't see, but there's a lot of need for those. Making sure that we are meeting indoor environmental quality needs. So all those things that impact your ability to focus and be able to sit in a space or spaces for 7 hours out of a day. Also making sure, as Tony mentioned, we're providing opportunity and really having spaces to support special education or innovative programs, lab spaces, et cetera, as technology and teaching and learning has evolved. So all of these things are common themes throughout. These are a list, and they will be available to you after the presentation, but we discovered these specifically at each of the levels of the building. So at the elementary schools, it's not just HC Storm, like as Tony mentioned. We have the need for safety and security vestibules at 4 of our elementaries, and the need to improve visibility at the 2 others. So there's needs there. Making sure that we are adapting spaces for our earliest learners. Our little itty bitties don't have the same needs as our 5th graders or our 6th and 8th graders, right? So the spaces need to be their size, and they need to be adapted and be accessible. We're also trying to teach more project and hands-on learning in the district, and a regular classroom is just doesn't have the utilities, the powers, the space, and the storage, and the student access to be able to use those spaces. We also have improvements for other programs district-wide, and the ability to improve or expand programs at different levels within the district that need to be considered. And putting learning on display is important. It garners intrigue, and it gets students excited about teaching and learning. So Brad talked about making do. This slide has some positives and negatives about making do. They're what we call physical traces. So as we go around the building, our architects are trained to look at traces that tell us different things about how users are using the building. Some of them are celebratory. Some of them are great, positive. We want to find ways to enhance them. Some of them really highlight where there might be needs by the ways people are using them, whether it's power needs, charging technology, whether they're makeshift room designations, whether we're trying to adapt lighting to meet those with sensory needs, as well as trying to standardize and provide furniture that is not a collection, as I think was mentioned, from outside of the school, but also meets fire code and meets accessibility needs. So the next series of slides will highlight ways that today we see schools being designed to promote these different learning activities. Tony touched on how it used to be, instruction was the teacher as a sage on the stage, and it doesn't happen that way anymore. Yes, you might have all group instruction, but a lot of times students are working on projects. They need places that aren't on the floor in the corridor to do their project work. They need places to store that work. These are all opportunities for them to enhance these different type of learning activities and meet in different group sizes in different parts of the building, and start to build and own that agency that they'll need as they grow into adults. So we talked about some important features of school design, and this is an example of having safe and welcoming schools, making sure you have secured entry sequence and layers of security before entering a building. Also, making sure that our spaces have the opportunity, so the utilities, the lighting, the space, the flexibility and furniture and equipment to be able to do a number of different activities within the classroom. We talked about power needs. Power needs are pretty consistent across the district. There's just not an ample enough amount of power to begin with to serve the devices that students have today, and they're not adequately placed. Outdoor learning and sustainability is really important. We all know what it's like to, I'm sure, to sit inside a building for hours at a time. I don't know about you, but it makes me like crazy. So getting out, connecting with nature, and having outdoor learning areas, but appropriately designed outdoor learning areas. You can't just send students outside and have devices or have activities that might not be supported by that outdoor learning space. Also give them a time to break away and engage in nature, engage with the elements, see the sun, see the sky, and that is all ways that help you reset and refresh, and it helps with your cognitive processes. Our schools have an opportunity to make them more student-centric. Students learn on the floor, they learn in small groups, they move about the classroom, and so really designing those spaces to meet them and their size and their needs is really important. It's an important consideration that needs to be made. Spaces should be flexible and adaptable, and the ability to adapt spaces for different group sizes, whether it's pairs, small groups, large groups, be able to still monitor those. So that's very important to teachers, to be able to give that agency to students to break away in small group activities, but hey, I can still keep an eye on them. I know what's going on. If they need help, I can go help them. School should be inspiring. A lot of schools need that extra boost of inspiration, and so you see that by the artwork and the way that the schools and the staff and the students color the walls. But providing that little bit of inspiration, not only at the elementary level, but middle and high school level, that makes students engaged and want to be at school. That we want them to be at school, right? So. And then touching on health and wellness. So this is an example of a number of different health and wellness components. So we've got physical health and wellness. We've got mental health and wellness. We've got getting outside and connecting with nature. But we also have spaces that are adapted with equipment, and that for those that have special needs that might need that equipment in their space, in the room to do it. Not just a tiny little office space to do that. So all opportunities to be able to provide these spaces here in the district. So throughout the process, these are some highlights of what we learned. BPS 101 schools should have safe and secure entrances and spaces within the building. They need to be physically accessible and address varied learning styles and different paths. They should be flexible and adaptable and equitable, so that not just accessing spaces, but being able to access programs, expand programs, so that there aren't wait lists for programs. And they need to be clean and healthy and sustainable. We also learned that through the facilitating process that really the district should keep the single high school structure, keep the single middle school structure, the grade level configuration pre-K through 5, 6, 8, 9, 12. The neighborhood and community and the character of each of the buildings is very important. We all know how active and involved our community is in our buildings. And our buildings need to reflect that and support that and keep that neighborhood structure. Also need to keep those and enhance those innovative programs and those specialized programs. So build upon what we have and all the great things that are happening in the district. So next, I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa, and she'll take us through the rest of tonight's program. Thank you.
Over the course of these next 4 community engagement sessions, like you've heard, your feedback will be used so we can answer those key questions that you see on the screen about the community's priorities and how to implement this plan. We have a very exciting opportunity in Batavia to improve our facilities with minimal impact to taxpayers. I know that's all on your mind. So we are in a unique position where we can invest in our facilities without increasing the district's bond and interest tax levy. You're going to learn more about that at the finance session next session. And then once you help us pick the financial path forward, Then we're going to turn our attention back to that master facilities plan, and that's when you'll help us prioritize so that we can live within our means here. So it's a very exciting time. We're excited to be able to hear from you because there is an opportunity here to do some great things. And it is time to hear from you, so I'm going to call Kelly back to explain the next part where we hear from you.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's give a round of applause to Lisa, Brad, Tony, and Carrie for sharing this information tonight. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Okay, so now it's time to do some work. On your table, there is a green piece of paper, and it is the activity for tonight. This is the official sheet for your recorder to use. We're going to go through the instructions and make sure everyone understands what's going on. So first, each table group needs to select a recorder and a facilitator. Your recorder is responsible for completing the worksheet. Make sure to fill out all the information in the box in the upper left-hand corner. That is very important. And the facilitator should facilitate discussions, keep the group focused, so the work is completed on time, and then report table results back when we share ideas at the end of tonight's session. Please make sure the information recorded on the group's worksheet reflects general agreement. Everyone at the table is included in the agreement, and it's not just one or two individuals. Monitor the time to make sure your group finishes, and we'll start reporting out at about 8 o'clock. At the end of the session, we will only collect the green worksheet, so that has to be completed by your recorder. Thank you, guys. Sorry, guys. Okay, so there's two tasks. You're going to complete the task 1, the surprise and concern question, and then the task 2, key questions. Sorry, forgot to add that. Thank you.
So one of the things that we'd like to ask you, and is just to be brief as we're coming around with the microphone. It's not going to be a Q&A session. We're going to use the things that you guys give as feedback as we move forward in the future presentations. So all of that will be taken into consideration, and we'll walk through it. What we'd like you to do is just talk about one surprise, one concern, and one question, and just state that from your table, and then we'll move on, and we'll get Jenny and them going to the table. So if you want to go ahead, Jenny, that'd be great.
Okay, lucky to be first. I might get thrown out of the building. Our biggest surprise was, why did the study in 2018, which rated schools satisfactory or ideal in most categories, with very few of them listed as unsatisfactory, now we need to replace 4 elementary schools? What happened in that 4-year period? Where was the master plan for the last 10 years? And why are schools in poor condition? Where was the maintenance over that period of time? Oh. Biggest concerns. Schools that are raised, will they be on the same property? The timeline and student impact of while it's being built. Redistricting if the school number is ever reduced. Increasing the debt limit. You can't build 4 and renovate 4 schools without increasing the debt. You got to increase your bonds. Elementary schools today, each one's going to cost $25 million to build, 22 to 25 million. I know that's the next meeting, but I don't see how they're saying it's not going to affect your tax burden. It definitely will. Huh? Oh, key questions. Huh? What's the flexibility of our technology plan as things change so quickly? Will we be able to adapt as quick as times change?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we do recognize that there might be some overlap or the same questions, but please just let us hear what you've got to say.
All right. So our group's biggest surprise, I guess, is the lack of sprinklers in schools. We thought our children's not burning in fires was key. And our biggest concern is building security concerns and then / safety, like ADA compliance, things like that. And then our biggest key question, I think, let's see. So if it comes down to money, what are going to be the top priorities and basically what's going to be first on the chopping block? What's our nice to have instead of need to have? So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our biggest surprise in regards to BPS 101 facilities was the maintenance that has not been done and not planned, especially the electrical issues. It was a little strange. The biggest concern would be safety and security, as in the vestibules, the lack of any sort of school security in most of our buildings. And then the key question that we would have would be, how long is this plan going to last? And what's the capital development plan or the maintenance plan once new buildings have been built or upgraded? And we'd like to have more information on long-term plans after this plan.
So for us, the biggest surprise, I think, was seeing the variety of ways in which the buildings were being used educationally. It's amazing how teachers have been able to adapt and utilize the space that they have to work with. For us, the biggest concern was probably what's going to happen to the 6 elementary schools, especially on both sides of the river. I think, in terms of wanting to maintain equity and not have busing issues for kids being transported unnecessarily, further distances than they need to. And so I think the other thing was just how the updating will be done, the timing, and what the 2, 5, 10-year time horizon looks like as we move forward with the plan too. So.
All right. So I guess our biggest surprise was the comment on minimum effect on taxes. So obviously it sounds good, but understanding what that really means. So obviously the next meeting is going to be important for us to understand how that minimal effect on our taxes is really going to affect us and what that really means. And then I think one of our key concerns was just the process of the actual building, how it's going to affect our students over the time frame. If we're going to be knocking down buildings, where are our students going to go during that time, and how are we going to handle that? So that would be the question, is how are we handling that? So.
Hello, Table 4 had some of the similar questions and concerns. Probably the biggest surprise, again, the conditions of the school and kind of the perceived lack of proactive maintenance throughout the life cycle of the schools. In terms of the biggest concern, kind of tying to that budgeting for maintenance of new facilities in the future, and the overall, especially given the overall long-term fiscal stability of the state. And then in terms of the key questions, again, some of the same ones around fiscal things, but one that really stood out was how to account for neighborhood impact of keeping kids in their local neighborhood elementary school during construction was one that was very important to a lot of people in our group.
So we pretty much have the same stuff as what everybody's been saying. Biggest surprise was the maintenance that has been done on the existing buildings over the last 40 years. Biggest concern is with the construction process. Where are the students going to go during the construction? Will there be temporary classrooms? Is there going to be a rough blueprint dispersed to everyone so that we can see how this is going to work? Key question, biggest one is about traffic patterns. Once the construction is facilitated, what will the traffic patterns look like? And will the safety what will the safety actually be at that point, so.
So some of our surprises one of our surprises that kind of hasn't been covered is the safety issues and how, like HC Storm, it opens directly into the cafeteria. One of our concerns were the tearing down of the elementary schools and how the project is going to be financed. Some of our questions are, what are the actual safety concerns for each building? And then for more the architect stuff is, what are the top innovation trends that schools don't actually use that may not need to be implemented? And then the final big one is, what do teachers want for the buildings?
A lot of the same. Surprised at the inability to keep up with the power demands. The comment regarding raising taxes, or not having to raise taxes significantly, was a surprise. As far as concerns, how do we create a plan? Commented earlier before, but how do we create a plan that's going to stand the test of time and be nimble for longer than the next 10 years? Obviously, as we commented at this table, steel walls were the innovation of the past that was thought to be gangbuster awesome and didn't work out so well. So what are we doing that's going to keep us ahead of the curve as fast as technology changes today? And then key questions, I think most all of ours were covered. Specifics about security and safety, impact to the communities. As, if we're going to be doing a lot of construction, that's obviously a lot of heavy equipment. It's a lot of 18-wheelers with supplies and pallets, and as it's already been commented, they're pretty tight communities. So how is all that going to play out? So those are the top ones.
All right, wrapping it up. So biggest surprise was probably the idea that there are funds available in order to be able to expedite a lot of the necessary improvements in the schools. So we talked about, minimal impact on taxes. So that sounds great. That was a surprise. Concerns, really accessibility. We have a lot of outsourcing of kids to other districts and things. How are we going to be able to incorporate facilities to be able to make sure that those folks are taken care of, vocational plans, social and emotional needs, that sort of thing. With the fluctuation of enrollment, how is that going to affect our planning moving forward? And then echoing key questions about safety and things, but I think the IDR group said too was about how will STEM be incorporated into the planning moving forward, and how will we create a sound technology plan for the future, not just the next 10 years, but moving forward. So.
Well, thank you, everyone, for all your hard work tonight. These are some great discussions that we've had, and we'll continue that. Looking ahead for the future session, the next one is on the 24th. And just kind of from a show of hands, how many of you are planning on attending that? Just so we can kind of get okay, great. That's awesome. That's really good. We're looking forward to that as a community. This is our opportunity to kind of give our feedback, and this is really, I hope you guys can go and tell your neighbors and friends to come to that on the 24th also, because it's a critical piece of getting this feedback as a community to the board and to all of the Batavia School District area. So thank you so much for your time, and everyone get home safe, okay? Thank you.